Hey everybody, welcome to I Am 33 Days. Today is day 8. Our scripture comes from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 17. We are heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, provided we suffer with him in order that we may also be glorified with him. We're talking about remembering what happens at our baptism, that you are baptized priest, prophet, and king. Sometimes people get confused and be like, well, what about my daughter? Like, why isn't she baptized a queen, right? Well, it's going back to whose royalty, but Christ's royalty, right? That Christ is the priest, the prophet, and the king, right? And that he invites us into his royalty. So that's why we use that language, to remind us of our mark and the invitation that God gives us into this royal family and this royal life. And I think Chris was reflecting in this chapter that sometimes we forget where we come from and who we belong to. And sometimes we forget our own dignity, and our actions often betray who we are. He tells the story of, if you go to St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, they used to have this big, I think it's kind of like a red seal that used to be in front of the altar for years and years, and all the high kings and emperors used to be coronated there, right, or consecrated there, as this big fancy celebration would happen. And he said about 400 years ago, when they were renovating St. Peter's, they moved that seal to the floor near the entrance, not as to betray and say, oh, down with the kings and the emperors of the past, but more so that all the pilgrims that came to St. Peter's, right, all those Christians, will remember that they are royalty. You are royalty. I am royalty. Right? We're invited into this divine life. And we need to sometimes remember that. Because when we remember where we come from and what we're invited into, we start to examine the way that we're living our life and how we go about things and how we use things. I spent most of yesterday cleaning up my yard, as this is becoming kind of the youth ministry cribs every day in this current reality. So I was in the yard and I was cleaning it up. And I like a nice yard. I like to mow my lawn and all this fun stuff. The homeowner life now for a couple of years. But I have to catch myself to say, am I making this yard clean for my own sake? Or am I doing it because I want my son to enjoy playing baseball in the backyard while he still doesn't hit it hard enough to break my window, right? And so I took a pause while I was raking yesterday. My son says, now is the time for a break. And I got to play ball with my son. We have to kind of remember in this whole story of salvation that what God accomplished, right, in cleaning up our sin, right, in the victory of the cross and the resurrection as we live in this Easter season, that God did this so we could partake in his divine life, right, and to participate and share in that. As I cleaned up this world of my backyard, so I could invite my son to participate in a game of ball with his father. And it's funny. The times when a relationship with myself and my children is usually a little bit rough, generally almost always connects to them forgetting who they are. And often, I'm not perfect like God is perfect. That's usually my fault, because I haven't given them the time or the attention. And when I start to refocus on that, right, on the relationships closest to me, and helping my children to know that they are loved, and they have a father who loves them and will be present for them and will sacrifice for them and will give them the attention and the compassion and the mercy, and just provide for them. This calmness, this anxiety slowly starts to seep away. So our reflection for today: how does your life fail to reflect the reality of your dignity? What is maybe out of sync with who you are as a son and daughter of God, being part of this royal family? And then he asks a good question. We got to reflect on that, notice that, but then what are you going to do about it? So he says, start here. I like this. Upon waking up every morning, we're going to use the mirror again. Look at the mirror and say, I am a royal son or daughter of the Most High God. Remember who you belong to. Then maybe your prayer is not so empty, not so much talking to a stranger. talking to the great High King. And I'll meet you in prayer.